steak tartare can sometimes be a little intimidating to make. You think that it's super fancy, that all the French chefs do it, and they do it, but that's because it's so easy. In fact, it's more of an assemblage than it is an actual recipe. And best of all, you can tweak it to your own taste. So today I'm going to show you how I have been trained to make a classic French bistro steak tartare, and I'm going to try out a couple of wines to see once and for all what is the best wine pairing for steak tartare in all the land. Let's get to it. Hello wine lovers, I'm Erin, the founder and chief sommelier here at the Wine Sisters. Welcome to our YouTube channel. This is the place where every week we show you how to eat, drink, and entertain like a pro. Today we are going nostalgia. We are talking classic steak tartare. Now, steak tartare and I go way back because back in the day when my mom used to make hamburgers by hand, and she would put in the raw beef and she'd put in the egg, she'd put in the MSG. I mean, I am a child of the 80s. It's a little freewheeling time. My sister and I would sit there at her leg and chirp like little birds, begging for the raw hamburger mixture. It was so delicious. And of course, my English dad was out by the barbecue shouting, "They're gonna get worms!" I didn't get worms. In fact, look how great I turned out. My sister? That's debatable. Now you fast forward to about 2008, and I was the sommelier at a private club here in Toronto, working with the executive chef who was fantastic. English born and raised and classically trained, naturally. He worked at places like London's Swiss Savoy Hotel, he cooked for royalty, and he taught me how to make a classic steak tartare. I'm gonna show you how I do it. Now, you can see here I've got all the ingredients laid out before me, and I've got the recipe laid out in our blog on thewinesisters.com. I've put a link in the show notes, so if you would like to see the recipe, go head over there, and maybe while you're down there, maybe give us a like and a subscribe, because that will help us spread the good word of wine. But back to the task at hand. So I've got everything laid out here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mix in some of the liquids. So into this, I'm going into this littler bowl. I've got a good amount of Worcestershire. I've got a good amount of that. I'm going to mix up about 8 ounces of beef. So I've got about a teaspoon or so of Worcestershire. We're also going to put in, I'm going to say a good tablespoon or so of some nice classic Dijon. That's going to give it a real fiery, tangy bite. I'm going to put in the teeniest drop of hot pepper sauce. Tabasco sauce, hot sauce, just the teeniest little drop, just to give it a little soupçon. And I'm also going to put in olive oil. Now in the recipe, we call for extra virgin olive oil, and that is exceptional. But earlier I made some lovely garlic confit, and I have garlic oil, so I think that's gonna go really nicely. So I'm gonna put in a good teaspoon, and if I need a little bit more later on, I'll put in some extra olive oil there. And this is optional, you don't have to do it, but it's highly, highly encouraged. This is a little bit of cognac. It's delicious. Andrew, my beautiful English classically trained chef, said it's a good idea, and I wouldn't want to let him down. So in goes about a ½ ounce of cognac. I'm just going to stir this all up, give it a nice little stir, stir, stir. And here's another thing I'm going to do. I'm going to add in some egg yolk. Now, normally on steak tartares, you're going to see a perfectly pristine round egg yolk sitting perched precariously on top of that beefy disc. When I was actually getting my egg yolk out and separating it from the white, it kind of fell apart a little bit. So who's going to be any wiser? I'm just going to add it right in, because you would do that anyway with an egg yolk. You would mash it right into your steak tartare. Now, if you are at all nervous about using egg yolk, you probably shouldn't be eating raw beef either, but you don't have to use egg yolk, but it will act as a nice glue and a nice binder and give a real unctuousness and a real sort of creamy richness to your steak tartare. So there are some of my liquids all mixed up, and I'm going to put that just off to the side and into my much larger bowl. Here I'm going to put in 8 ounces of steak tartare. Now my friend Rebecca is coming by to help me eat the steak tartare, so I've divided the recipe in half from what's on the blog. On the blog, the recipe is for 16 ounces and for a meal for 4 people, or munchies for 8 to 10 people. But you could honestly serve steak tartare with a side salad or a couple of frites. Very French bistro, and I would be your best friend if you invited me over for that. Okay, so we've got 8 ounces of really good tenderloin. It has to be tenderloin because you want it to be very lean. You want it to not have a lot of grizzle or a lot of fat because it's being served raw. So you don't want to be chewing on a lot of fat parts. I've got in a good amount of diced shallot. This is 1 fat shallot. I'm going to put in, for now, because it's quite a bit, I'm going to eyeball it. I'm just going to put in all of it. I wasn't going to, but now I'm going to. You can just never tell what's going to happen here at the Wine Sisters. So in goes our shallot. I've got about a tablespoon of capers. I've just lightly sort of sliced these up, given them a bit of a rough mash, and the piece de resistance, my beloved cornichon. Now, cornichon is just a fancy name for a little pickle. They look like this, but they're delicious and they're tangy, and they're going to add a real zest to our steak tartare. And you can also use a mixture of parsley and chives. I've got them all diced up here, and in these go as well. Now, on the blog, you will also see that we call for some anchovies. That's because in Andrew's recipe, he uses a good 4 anchovies for 16 ounces of tenderloin. He's the kind of guy who loves anchovies. Like, he could eat them straight out of the tin. And I know that amongst foodies everywhere, they're kind of the cool kid on the block right now, but I think they're revolting. So you'll not find an anchovy near me, maybe in the Worcestershire sauce, but I'm not adding anchovies in. If you like them, then feel free to dice them up and add them in here as well. So we've got this nice mixture coming in here. This is sort of the dry goods, as it were. And now I'm going to gently add in our liquid goods. So this is the mustard mixture. I'm just gonna pour this in. It's so good. It smells fantastic, you guys. I can smell the shallot. I can smell the spices, like the chive and oh, it's just gonna be so good. And you can see that it's getting this nice shiny gloss. I'm gonna put in just a little bit more olive oil because I'd like it to be just a tiny bit shinier. And this is what I mean. Feel free to mix and match and add or subtract to your taste. Of course, it's harder to subtract once it's in there, so it's better to go slow and add as you go along the way. Okay, I'm gonna give this a little taste, and then I'm going to season it with salt and pepper. You'll notice I've left the salt and pepper till the very end. Why have I done that? Because the cornichon and the capers are quite salty on their own. You also get a little bit of fiery heat from that little soupçon of cognac, as well as the hot sauce that we put in. So I wanted to season it at the very end. And this is what I learned in chef school. You don't just eat it straight off the spoon, because obviously other people want to eat it. What you do is you take your mixing spoon, you put it on a spoon that will no longer go into the main mixture. And so I'm just gonna give it a couple of twists of pepper. Maybe more than a couple of twists. I like a little bit of pepper, put that right in there, and a light sprinkling of our salt. This is just regular kosher salt. Now guys, what you also want to be careful about, it's tempting, especially if you're like, oh, I just love pickles, or oh, I just love shallots. It's tempting to go overboard, but you really want a symphony of flavors. You don't want anything to be too extreme. You really want everything in balance. So think about the spokes on a bike wheel. Everything needs to be equal for it to roll evenly. Okay, so this is brilliant. This is ready to roll. Okay, so now that it's in this bowl, we want to shape it nicely. You'll notice that in bistros, they often sort of shape it into a hamburger patty shape. And that's because, in the words of Nigella Lawson, it's really hard to make brown food look good. You know, you think about your chilies or your beef bourguignons or your coq au vins or whatever. It's really, you know, when they just sit like a lump on a plate, it's less elegant. So you want to do your best to make it look as elegant as possible. So we're going to try and shape it. So I may have to use my hands, but they have been washed. So let me just try and do this. If you have a hamburger shaper, you can do that as well. Okay, so this is all there is to it. We've got our classic bistro steak tartare. I've got a little bit of crostini that I just pulled out of the oven from a baguette. I've drizzled them with some more of that garlic oil. I'm also going to serve on the side some just plain salted kettle chips. And now comes the fun part. We're gonna eat it, but I've got 3 traditional bistro wines. Each one, they have their place in the annals of time as a great wine pairing for steak tartare. So let's find out, shall we? We're back, and through the magic of editing, I have brought my wines out of the cellar and out of the fridge, and I've uncorked them, ready to roll. Now, what we're gonna be trying today are 3 of the most popular ones that you will find recommended to go with classic steak tartare. Now, of course, we've got the ever-present Beaujolais, and longtime viewers know that this is one of my favorites, and it is a top choice to go with classic bistro steak tartare. We've also got sparkling wine. This happens to be a Crémant. Crémant is a sparkling wine that's made in the same style as champagne, but from elsewhere in France. If you're curious about what that actually means, just head to this video that we did about a year ago explaining the differences between different bubblies. It'll be really interesting for you, but just wait until the end. Also, we've got a white wine, and this may surprise you, but I think when we've got a really rich, silky, and luxurious white, because our steak tartare is made with tenderloin, and as we explained earlier, there's not a lot of fat or marbling. It's a very lean meat, so a lot of people think that a richer white is the way to go. We shall see. Now, part of this taste testing challenge will be my friend Rebecca. Rebecca, come on in here.
Hello, I'm very excited to eat some steak tartare and drink some wine, Erin.
You should be very excited. I'm very excited. It is delicious.
It smells delicious.
Okay, which do you want to go with first? We've got a Crémant. As you heard, we've got a white, this is a Roussillon, and we've got a Beaujolais.
Well, if you've taught me anything, it's that we always start a party on acid, so
My favorite
it'll be the Crémant, please.
All right, for you, we've got a little bit, look how beautiful this pours.
Ooh, the color is lovely.
Right, so this is actually a Crémant de Bourgogne. Do you know the main grapes of Bourgogne? Burgundy?
In Burgundy, Cab Franc.
Very close. It is Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
And Gamay is the secondary grape. And this one is a blend of Pinot Noir and Gamay. Let's try the wine. Now, I love a bubbly.
Me too.
You get that sort of nice acidic bite. Let's see how it works. Okay. I'm gonna use a little crostini.
Okay, I'll do the same.
And then you have your spoon and I have my spoon.
Okay.
Santé. You like that?
I'm glad you put all the onion in because I'm a big onion lover. And the cornichon, perfect.
Yeah, it's a nice subtle flavor, but really still robust. So let's see how this works with the...
Yeah.
Good, I'd be happy with this pairing.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got some nice fruitiness. Again, that acidity, it cleanses out that richness of the egg yolk, the olive oil, cleanses your palate and gets you ready for the next bite. So I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
All right, well
It's a classic.
It's a classic for a reason. So thumbs up to the Rosé Sparkling. Shall we move on to the white?
Let's.
This one's actually from the Roussillon. It is mostly a grape called Grenache Blanc, but there's also some Marsanne and Roussanne in here. Let's see what we've got, shall we? So I'm gonna pour a little bit here for me. Now I find this really interesting. Most people, because it's red meat, they wanna go with red wine, but a lot of people will also then argue, people who are a little bit more in the food and wine scene, again, the steak tartare doesn't have a lot of fat, doesn't have a lot of marbling, so there's nothing for the tannins in that red wine to really tango with. Instead, if you get a nice spicy, but really unctuous and nicely textured white, that it actually helps the steak tartare sing a little bit more. So let's see what we've got.
Hey.
Santé, can't forget the cheers.
Never.
Well, you just go right ahead and sip. You just go right on in there.
I thought that was the game.
All right, fine. Well, let me, please. We've got some beautiful stone fruit, some really nice chalky minerality, for God's sakes. And then we're just gonna sip it. Fine, fine.
You asked me over to drink wine and eat with you, Erin. I'm getting a light apricot, and I would even say an absolute light hint of marzipan for me here.
But what sells it for me as well is that there is this gorgeous spiciness in the background, but the weight isn't so heavy. There's still a bright acidity and more of a medium body, but there's a vibrancy as well as a nice texture. Well, let's see if the pundits are correct. Let's see if this actually works. Oh, you just keep drinking.
Well, I really
you
like
forgot.
the wine, so already this is, you know, it's my favorite wine thus far, but will it be a good pairing?
Let's
That's
find
the
out.
question.
Okay, I like the steak tartare. I think it's subtly flavored, but still robust. I really like it. Now let's taste it with the wine. It's okay.
Yeah, actually, it's okay, but I prefer them, like, love the steak tartare, love the wine. Together,
Yeah,
fine.
I feel like, yeah, they don't make each other sing. In fact, the white wine is actually a little bit washed out, maybe because all of the cornichon and all of the shallot. I actually don't think that this pairing really works for me.
No.
Terrific wine, terrific steak tartare,
I
but
agree. I think because the steak tartare does have some bright acidity in it from some of the ingredients that you popped in, we don't need the acidity of this wine.
so yeah, I'm gonna say no to this. I wish I didn't. I was really gunning for
I
a
know,
white
me
wine pairing. I was
too.
really gunning for the ringer, but slam this back and try it with the Beaujolais. Okay, now, of course, we've got Beaujolais Cru. Now, a lot of you might be familiar with Beaujolais Nouveau or even Beaujolais Village. Once you get up to the highest tier in that pyramid in the region of Beaujolais, and the main grape is Gamay, you start to get crus. This one is from Juliana's. So this is where we're going to start to find really elegant wines of rich and juicy fruit, red and black, as well as some gorgeous minerality. And it's typically the classic pairing. So let's see if we're right.
Delicious bistro wine.
Delicious.
So are these wines reasonably inexpensive, if you're calling them bistro wines?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like all of these, at least in Ontario, so it depends on where you live, but in Ontario, all of these are maybe $23 or under.
Great.
Yeah. That's the winner.
Yeah.
So this is what we've done, is we have put to bed, put to rest, the long debate of what is the best wine with steak tartare. You know what? You didn't have to go far. It was what we knew all along. It is, in fact, the Beaujolais wine straight out of France. the Gamay grape wins it again.
That said, I would say a sparkling and a steak tartare is a close second for me, and actually is usually my pairing of choice, just because I like to be that. I eat them alone when I'm traveling alone. A steak tartare and a glass of champagne. That's where you'll find
Well, you're
me.
just going for the image, but
How dare you?
if you wanted to go for the white, if that was really your jam, consider something like a tuna tartare or a steak tartare, or a tuna tartare or a salmon tartare.
Yes.
That might be the better choice. So alas, I was really gunning for the white. It is a beautiful white. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work with me for the steak tartare, but Beaujolais it is.
I'm going in for more, Erin. How
Go in
about
for
you?
more. You go in for more, and I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. This was a ton of fun. If you have any questions about food and wine pairing, please leave them in the comments below, and I promise I will get back to you as soon as I see them. And while you're there, if you want to give us a like and maybe hit that subscribe button, that really helps us to get boosted in the old algorithm so more people can find out how to eat, drink, and entertain like a pro. So until next week, wine lovers, stay well and drink better.
Santé.
Santé.